I always believed that if I kept my head down and paid my bills on time, I would eventually be safe. I was wrong. The moment I mentioned the bonus I had spent 6 months earning, the trap snapped shut. My sister did not just demand half the money because she had children. She unraveled a lifetime of lies. Proving my financial independence was nothing but a house of cards she and my parents had already set on fire. The rain against the window of the conference room felt like a physical barrier between the gray, weeping city outside and the sterile, fluorescent safety of the office. I sat with my hands folded in my lap, trying to stop my thumbs from rubbing against each other, a nervous tic I had developed somewhere around the age of 12. Across the mahogany table, my director, Marcus, was shuffling papers. The sound was sharp and deliberate. I had spent the last 6 months living inside a spreadsheet, leading a data migration project that had consumed my weekends, my evenings, and a significant portion of my sanity. I was tired. It was a bone-deep exhaustion that sleep did not touch, the kind that comes from holding your breath for too long. "Sarah," Marcus said, finally looking up. His face was unreadable, the standard corporate mask. "You know we appreciate the hours you put in. The migration was flawless. We came in under budget and 2 weeks ahead of schedule." I nodded, forcing a polite, professional smile. "Thank you, Marcus. The team worked incredibly hard." "It wasn't just the team," he corrected. "It was you. You caught that redundancy in the legacy system that would have cost us a fortune." He slid a thick white envelope across the table. It moved with a soft hiss. "We want to make sure you know how much we value that kind of attention to detail." I reached for the envelope. My heart did a slow, heavy thump against my ribs. I had been hoping for a standard bonus, maybe 3 or 4%, enough to make a small dent in the student loans that had been following me around like a persistent shadow since graduation. I opened the flap and pulled out the letter. My eyes scanned the boilerplate text until they landed on the bolded figure in the center of the page. $25,000. The air left my lungs. I blinked, sure that I had misread the number, that perhaps a decimal point had wandered astray, but it was still there. $25,000. It was more money than I had ever seen in a single check. It was a year of rent. It was safety. For the first time in my 32 years, the tight knot of anxiety that lived permanently in the center of my chest loosened. "Just a fraction. Thank you," I managed to say, my voice sounding steadier than I felt. "This is very generous. You earned it," Marcus said, standing up to shake my hand. "Don't spend it all on rent. Go somewhere nice. Take a break." I walked back to my desk in a daze. I did not plan to go somewhere nice. I did not plan to buy a new car or upgrade my wardrobe. As I sat down in my cubicle, surrounded by the hum of servers and the clatter of keyboards, I opened my personal budget spreadsheet. It was my favorite document in the world. I typed the number into the income column. I watched the formulas update. If I put $20,000 directly toward my student loans, I would be debt-free in 18 months instead of 5 years. The remaining $5,000 could go into my emergency fund, bringing it to a level where a lost job or a broken transmission wouldn't ruin me. I stared at the screen, tears pricking the corners of my eyes. I was going to be free. I was going to be safe. The drive to my parents' house that weekend felt lighter than usual. I lived in a modest apartment in the city, a third-floor walk-up with creaky floors and efficient heating, but my parents were still in the suburbs. In the same beige siding house where I had grown up. Usually, the drive was a time for me to brace myself. I had to mentally prepare for the subtle interrogations about my dating life, or the lack thereof, and the heavy atmosphere that always seemed to hang over the family due to my sister, Lisa. But today was different. Today I had good news. Today I was the daughter who had made it work. I pulled into the driveway behind my father's aging truck. The lawn was overgrown, tufts of crabgrass fighting for dominance near the porch. It was a visual reminder of my father's aching back and my mother's refusal to hire help. I made a mental note to perhaps use a few $100s of the bonus to pay a landscaping crew for a spring cleanup. That would be a nice surprise. I found them in the kitchen. My mother was at the stove, stirring something that smelled like onions and paprika, while my father sat at the small round table, nursing a mug of coffee and staring at a stack of mail. "Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad," I said, dropping my keys in the ceramic bowl by the door. "Sarah." My mother turned, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "You're early. We didn't expect you until 6. I couldn't wait," I said, the smile breaking through before I could temper it. "I had my review on Friday." My father looked up, his eyes narrowing slightly behind his bifocals. "Did they fire you?" "No. Dad?" I laughed, pulling out a chair. "Opposite. The big project I was leading? It's done. And they gave me a bonus. A big one." My mother abandoned the stove and leaned against the counter, crossing her arms. "Well, that is good news. Enough to finally fix that rattle in your car?" "More than that," I said. I took a breath. $25,000. The silence that followed was not the celebratory eruption I had fantasized about on the drive over. It was heavy, thick, and instant. My father put his coffee mug down slowly. My mother looked at my father, then back at me, her expression shifting from surprise to something colder, something calculating. 25,000, my father repeated. "Just for doing your job? For doing it well," I said, feeling a sudden need to defend myself. "It was months of overtime. I saved the company huge money." My mother sighed, a long, whistling sound through her nose. She turned back to the pot on the stove and stirred it aggressively. "Must be nice," she said to the onions. "Excuse me?" I asked. "It must be nice," she said, louder this time, not turning around, "to have a job where they just hand you $25,000 like it is candy. It must be nice not to have any real expenses to worry about, no mouths to feed." The joy I had walked in with began to curdle in my stomach. "I have expenses. Mom, I have rent. I have loans." "Loans," she scoffed. "You have been paying those loans for 10 years. Surely they are almost gone. Imagine if you had children. Sarah, imagine if you had to buy diapers and pay for daycare and worry about school clothes. That is real expense." I knew where this was going. All roads in this house eventually led to Lisa. "How is Lisa?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "How do you think she is?" my father snapped. "She is drowning. Tom got his hours cut at the warehouse again. The transmission on the minivan is slipping. They are 3 months behind on the electric bill." I stared at the tablecloth, tracing the pattern of a coffee stain with my fingernail. "I am sorry to hear that. Sorry doesn't pay the electric bill," my mother said, turning around and pointing the wooden spoon at me. "You come in here, waving this money around. Do you know how hard your sister works? She is raising 2 children. 2 beautiful grandchildren that we barely get to spoil because every extra cent we have goes to keeping their lights on." I felt the familiar prickle of guilt, the button they had installed in me since childhood. I was the capable one, the quiet one, the one who didn't need help. Lisa was the one who needed saving. It had been true when we were teenagers, and I was doing my homework while Lisa was sneaking out the window. And it was true now. I work hard too. I said quietly. "Nobody said you don't work hard." My father grumbled. "But you are one person. You live alone. What does a single woman need with $25,000? You can't even spend that much." I took a deep breath, trying to channel the calm authority I used in boardrooms. "I have a plan for it. I am going to pay off the bulk of my student loans. Once those are gone, I can start saving for a down payment on a house. I need to secure my future." "Your future," my mother repeated, shaking her head. "Always about you." "Sarah, family helps family. That is how we survived. That is how we raised you. If Lisa had that money, she could catch up on everything. She could breathe for the first time in years." "I am not giving Lisa my entire bonus," I said, my voice hardening. I didn't say the whole thing. My mother said quickly, her tone shifting from accusatory to wheedling. "But surely you can share, half. Even 10,000 would change her life." "Mom, no. I have been drowning in debt too. You just don't see it because I don't ask you for money." My father stood up, scraping his chair against the linoleum. You don't ask because you don't have to. You have a degree. You have a fancy job. Lisa has nothing but stress. We are having dinner tonight, my mother announced, effectively ending the negotiation. Lisa and Tom are coming over. We are celebrating Haley getting on the honor roll. And now, I suppose, we are celebrating your windfall. She made the word windfall sound dirty, like something I had stolen rather than earned. I decided to stay, mostly because leaving would have been seen as an act of war. I retreated to the living room, answering emails on my phone, trying to recapture the feeling of pride I had felt in the office. It was difficult. The house felt suffocating. Every picture on the wall seemed to be of Lisa's children, Haley and Leo. There were school photos, candid shots of them at the park, pictures of Lisa holding them as babies. There was one photo of me, tucked in the corner of a shelf, from my college graduation. I looked tired in the photo. By the time Lisa and Tom arrived, the sun had gone down. I heard the chaos before the door even opened. The sound of a 6-year-old crying and an 8-year-old shouting filled the porch. The door swung open and Lisa came in, carrying a diaper bag that looked like it had been through a war, a toddler on her hip, and a look of frantic exhaustion etched into her features. Lisa was 35, 3 years older than me, but she looked 10 years older. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, gray roots showing at the temples. She wore leggings that had lost their elasticity and a stained sweatshirt. Tom followed her, carrying a casserole dish. He offered me a weary, apologetic smile. "Hey, Sarah," Tom said softly. "Good to see you." "Hi, Tom." "Hi, Lisa." Lisa dropped the diaper bag on the floor and sighed. "Aunt Sarah, you're here. Mom said you had news." I looked at my mother, who was busy fussing over the grandchildren. She didn't look at me. "Yeah," I said. "I had a good review at work." "A good review," Lisa scoffed. She hoisted Leo up higher on her hip. Must be nice to get patted on the back. I spent all day fighting with the pharmacy because they wouldn't fill Leo's ear infection meds without a copay I didn't have. I felt a pang of sympathy. I loved my nephew. I reached out and touched his small hand. "Is he okay?" "He's fine now," Tom said quickly. "We got it sorted." "Yeah, because I called Mom," Lisa said, shooting a glare at her husband. We moved to the dining room. The table was set with the good china, which usually only came out for Christmas. The disparity between the celebration and the tension was palpable. We sat down, the kids squirming in their seats. So my father said, "Carving the roast chicken." Sarah was telling us about her bonus. I froze. I had hoped to avoid the specifics. "Oh?" Lisa looked at me. Her interest piqued. "Did you get a raise?" "A bonus," I said, keeping it vague. "A one-time thing. Mom said it was 25 grand. Lisa said, I dropped my fork. It clattered against the porcelain plate. The room went silent. Even the kids seemed to sense the shift in atmospheric pressure. I looked at my mother. She was studiously buttering a roll. "She told you?" I asked. "She texted me," Lisa said. Her eyes were wide, locked on my face. "Is it true? $25,000? "Yes," I said tight-lipped. "Before taxes." Lisa let out a short, breathless laugh. "Oh my God. 25,000. Do you have any idea what I could do with that?" I gripped the edge of the table. "Lisa, I worked really hard for this. I work hard," Lisa snapped. "Do you think raising 2 kids isn't work? Do you think keeping a house together with 0 money isn't work? I didn't say that. We are drowning." "Sarah," Lisa said, her voice rising, "Tom's hours are garbage. We have credit card collectors calling the house 3 times a day. We need a new roof. That sounds incredibly stressful," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "And I want to help. I was thinking I could give you $1,000 to help with the bills." $1,000? Lisa stared at me like I had offered her a handful of pennies. "You get 25 grand and you offer me 1,000? That is an insult. It is a gift," I said. "It is not an insult. It is crumbs," she shouted. She slammed her hand on the table. Haley jumped. "You are sitting on a gold mine and you are tossing me crumbs. You don't even need it. You are single. You rent an apartment. You have no one depending on you. I have debt. Lisa, I have student loans. Student loans? She mocked. Everyone has student loans. That is not a crisis. My kids needing clothes is a crisis. My car breaking down is a crisis. Tom put a hand on her arm. Lisa, honey, calm down. It is her money. Shut up. Tom, Lisa shook him off. You don't get to talk. If you made decent money, I wouldn't have to beg my little sister. She turned back to me, her eyes wet with angry tears. Give me half. What? I asked. Give me half, she repeated. 12,500. That clears our credit cards and fixes the van. It gives us a clean slate. You still keep 12 grand. That is more than enough for a single girl to go to Europe or buy shoes, or whatever it is you do. I sat there, stunned by the sheer magnitude of the entitlement. It wasn't just a request. It was a demand. She felt she owned my labor because she had reproduced, and I hadn't. Lisa, I said, my voice shaking slightly, I am not giving you $12,000. Why not? Because it is my money. Because I spent 6 months working 80-hour weeks to earn it. Because I need to secure my own retirement and pay off my own debts. Retirement? She laughed, a harsh, barking sound. You are 32. You are worried about being old while I'm worried about surviving today? That is so selfish. God, you are so selfish. I looked at my parents. My father was chewing slowly, looking at his plate. My mother was watching me, waiting. Mom? I said. Are you going to say anything? My mother sighed. Sarah, 12,000 is a lot to ask. I agree. But maybe 10? Your sister is really struggling. We are all one family. When you have plenty, you build a longer table, not a higher fence. I felt like I was losing my mind. The gaslighting was total. They had reframed my financial stability as a moral failing. I stood up. I couldn't sit at that table anymore. I am not doing this. I said. Lisa stood up too. Where are you going? To count your money? I am going home. I said, I offered you $1,000. That offer stands until I walk out that door. If you want it, take it. If you keep screaming at me, you get nothing. Lisa's face turned a blotchy red. You are trying to buy me off? You think you can control me with your money? Keep it. Keep your damn money. I don't want your charity. I want you to care about your family. I care about you, Lisa. That is why I offered. You hate my kids, she screamed. The accusation was so absurd, so painful, that I actually laughed. A short, shocked sound. I love Haley and Leo. This has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with them. You would rather hoard money in a bank account than help your own blood. You want to see us fail. You want to see us on the street so you can feel superior. Lisa, please, Tom said, standing up and trying to guide her away from the table. Get off me. Lisa shoved him away and stormed out of the dining room. I heard her stomping into the kitchen. I looked at my parents. My father finally looked up. You upset her. Sarah, I upset her? I asked, incredulous. She demanded half my bonus. She is under a lot of pressure. My mother said, you need to be the bigger person. You can afford to be the bigger person. I grabbed my purse. I am leaving. I walked to the front door. From the kitchen, I heard Lisa's voice, loud and trembling. She thinks she's better than us. She has always thought she was better than us. I walked out into the cool night air. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my keys on the driveway. I had to squat down to pick them up. And for a moment, I just stayed there, crouched by the tire of my reliable, 10-year-old sedan, trying to breathe. I felt dirty. I felt guilty. And beneath it all, I felt a simmering, hot anger that frightened me. I drove home in silence. No radio, no podcasts, just the hum of the tires on the pavement. When I got back to my apartment, the silence that usually felt peaceful now felt lonely. I sat on my couch and looked at my phone. The notifications were piling up. A family group chat named Wood Family was active. Lisa, I can't believe tonight. I really can't. To sit there and look at my kids and say no? Heartless. Mom, She is just overwhelmed. Lisa, give her time. She will do the right thing. Lisa, the right thing? She offered me $1,000 like I'm a beggar. I need real help. She has 25 grand just sitting there. Dad, Sarah, you really should apologize to your sister. We are a family. We share burdens. I stared at the screen, my thumbs hovering over the keyboard. I wanted to scream. I wanted to type out every hour of overtime I had worked. I wanted to explain compound interest. I wanted to tell them that I was terrified of ending up like them, paycheck to paycheck, panicked and bitter. But I knew it wouldn't matter. To them, money was not a tool. It was a fluid substance that belonged to whoever was screaming the loudest. I typed, I love you all, but my finances are my own. I have my own debts and my own goals. I offered a gift because I care, but I cannot give away half my income. That is not a reasonable request. The response was immediate. Lisa, income? It's a bonus. It's free money. You are unbelievable. You care more about your bank account than your nieces and nephew. Don't bother coming over for Easter. I don't want my kids around someone so selfish. Lisa, and keep your $1,000. I don't want a dime from you if it comes with this much judgment. Lisa, don't talk to me. I put the phone down on the coffee table. I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. I should have felt relieved that I had kept my money. I should have felt proud that I stood my ground. But as I stood there in the dark, I didn't feel safe. I felt like I had just cut the anchor line, and I was drifting out to sea, entirely alone. My phone buzzed again. I ignored it. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were still shaking. I thought about the spreadsheet on my computer. The numbers were black and white. They made sense. They were fair. My family, I was realizing, was neither. I went to bed. But I didn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying the look in Lisa's eyes. It wasn't just desperation. It was ownership. She truly believed that my success was her property, and my parents agreed. Somewhere around 3 a.m., I finally drifted off. I dreamed of drowning, but the water wasn't water. It was paper, thousands of sheets of paper, invoices and bills and bank statements, filling my mouth and nose until I couldn't breathe. I woke up the next morning with a headache that throbbed behind my eyes. I made coffee. I checked my bank account. The bonus hadn't hit yet. It was scheduled for the next pay cycle. But looking at the pending transaction usually calmed me down. Today, it just made me feel sick. I didn't know it then. But the argument at the dinner table was the easy part. It was the frontal assault. I could see it coming. I could defend against it. I thought the worst thing that could happen was that my sister wouldn't talk to me for a few months. I thought I was dealing with greed. I had no idea I was dealing with theft. The week dragged on. I went to work. I smiled at my colleagues. I accepted congratulations on the bonus with a tight, pained smile. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped, but it was silence from Lisa. My mother called twice, leaving voicemails that started with, "We just want to talk," and ended with, "Please don't be stubborn." I didn't call back. I needed space. I needed to remember that I was a separate person, not just a resource to be mined. On Friday, 7 days after the review, I logged into my bank account to move the bonus money. It had arrived. The balance looked beautiful. I initiated the transfer to the student loan servicer immediately. $20,000. Gone. I felt a rush of adrenaline. It was done. They couldn't ask for it if I didn't have it. I sat back in my chair and exhaled. I was debt-free. For the first time since I was 18. I owed nothing to anyone. I decided to celebrate. I would order sushi. I would watch a movie. I would turn off my phone. I opened the food delivery app on my phone. My credit card was saved on file. I selected my order and hit Place Order. A spinning wheel appeared. Then, a red box. Transaction declined. I frowned. That was odd. I paid my balance in full every month. I tried again. Transaction declined. Please contact your card issuer. A cold prickle of unease started at the base of my neck. I closed the app and opened my credit card banking app. I logged in. The screen refreshed. Current balance, $0. Available credit, $0. Status, closed by issuer, closed? I stared at the screen. Why would they close my card? I had a perfect payment history. My credit score was 780. I dialed the number on the back of the card. The automated system asked for my social security number. I entered it. We're sorry, but we are unable to locate an account with that information. My heart began to hammer. I pressed 0. I pressed 0 again. Finally, a human voice. Customer service. This is David. Can I have your full name? Sarah Wood. I said, my voice rising. I'm trying to use my card and it's being declined. The app says it's closed. One moment, Ms. Wood. Let me look that up. There was a long silence. The sound of typing. Ms. Wood. I see here that the account was closed yesterday due to a risk assessment flag. Risk assessment? What does that mean? It means our fraud department flagged activity that indicated a high risk of default or identity compromise. But that's impossible, I said. I just paid off my student loans. I have money. I haven't missed a payment in 10 years. I understand, the agent said, his voice bored. However, the system sees a high number of recent inquiries and a significant increase in debt-to-income ratio across your credit profile. My credit profile? I gripped the phone. I only have this card and my student loans, and the loans are paid. Ms. Wood, the agent said, sounding confused. I'm looking at your credit report right now. You have 7 active credit accounts. 3 of them are currently in delinquency. The room spun. 7? I whispered. Yes, ma'am. There's a Discover card, a Capital One card, a store card for Macy's. Stop, I said. Stop. I don't have those cards. I have never had those cards. The agent paused. Ma'am, are you saying you did not open these accounts? No, I shouted. I didn't. Then you may be a victim of identity theft. You need to pull your full credit report immediately. I hung up. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type. I went to the annual credit report site. I entered my information, my name, my social security number, my address. The report generated. I scrolled down. Account name, Capital One. Status, 90 days past. Due balance, $4,500. Account name, Best Buy store card. Status, 60 days past due. Balance, $2,200. Account name, Quick Cash. Personal loan status, collections. Balance, $5,000. The list went on. Total debt, $38,000. I stared at the dates. The Best Buy card was opened 3 years ago. The Capital One card, 4 years ago. The personal loan, just last month. 3 years ago. 3 years ago. I had been applying for my apartment. My printer was broken. I had emailed my tax returns and my ID to my father so he could print them for me at his home office. My father. Lisa lived 10 minutes from my parents. She had a key to their house. I looked at the addresses on the accounts. Most were listed as paperless billing, but one, the Best Buy card, had an address listed for the authorized user, 1402 Maple Drive, Lisa's house. I sat in my chair, the glow of the monitor illuminating the tears running down my face. I wasn't just drifting out to sea anymore. I had already drowned. I picked up my phone. I opened the group chat. The last message was from Lisa, telling me never to talk to her again. I didn't type anything. I just stared at her name, feeling the bile rise in my throat. Give me half. She had said. She hadn't been asking for a bonus. She had been asking for a bailout on a debt she had taken out in my name. And my parents? They had to know. They had to. I reached for the screenshot button. I took a picture of the credit report, then I stood up, walked to the bathroom, and threw up. The silence from my sister in the days following the explosion at the dinner table was not peaceful. It was heavy, a pressurized vacuum that seemed to suck the air out of my life. I went to work. I went to the gym. And I came home to my empty apartment. But the quiet was punctuated by the phantom sound of my phone not ringing. When it finally did ring, 3 days later, it was my mother. I stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. I was sitting on my living room floor, surrounded by piles of bank statements and credit card offers I had dug out of my recycling bin, trying to piece together the forensic evidence of my own life. "Hello? Mom," I said, keeping my voice even. "Sarah," my mother said. Her voice was tight, the tone she used when she was disappointed but trying to sound reasonable. "We haven't heard from you. I've been busy." "Mom, work is crazy. You have time to pick up the phone," she said. "Look, your father and I have been talking. You need to fix this thing with Lisa." I rubbed my temples. Fix it how? By writing her a check for $12,000? By being a sister, she said sharply. "Lisa is hurting. She called me yesterday crying because she had to put back groceries at the checkout line. Do you know how humiliating that is?" I felt a twinge of guilt, automatic and conditioned, but I shoved it down. "Mom, I offered to help. I offered $1,000. She threw it in my face, because it was a slap in the face. "Sarah, you have this windfall. You're sitting on a pile of cash, and you offer her pennies. Those kids didn't ask to be born into stress. They didn't ask for a father who can't hold down a shift or a mother who is falling apart. You are the only one who can stop the bleeding." I closed my eyes. "I am not the one who cut her." "Mom, you are the one holding the bandage," she countered. "Just think about it, please, for the peace of the family." She hung up before I could respond. I sat there, listening to the dial tone, feeling the familiar sensation of being the villain in a story I hadn't written. The next morning at work, the disconnect between my professional life and my crumbling personal reality became even more jarring. I was summoned to the HR department, not for a reprimand, but for the formal processing of my bonus. I sat in a glass-walled office with Karen, the compliance officer. She was a woman who radiated organized efficiency, her desk free of clutter, her blazer lint-free. "Here's the breakdown." "Sarah," she said, sliding a document across the desk. I looked at the numbers. The cash component was substantial, as expected, but a significant portion was in restricted stock units, vesting over the next 3 years. It was a golden handcuff, a promise of future wealth if I stayed the course, and, Karen added, opening a thick binder, because of the size of the grant and your new access level to client data, we need you to sign the updated financial disclosure and ethics policy. She tapped a page with a manicured fingernail. I leaned in to read the fine print. Employees must maintain a standard of financial integrity, must disclose any judgments, liens, or bankruptcy proceedings. Personal financial distress that could compromise judgment must be reported. My stomach turned over. Financial integrity. If the credit report I had seen a few nights ago was accurate, and I knew it was, my financial integrity was currently being eaten alive by someone living at 1402 Maple Drive. If those delinquent accounts went to judgment, if my wages were garnished, I wouldn't just lose my credit score, I could lose this job. I picked up the pen. My hand felt heavy. I signed my name, feeling like a fraud. "Is everything okay?" Karen asked, watching me closely. "You look a little pale." "I'm fine," I lied, forcing a smile, just overwhelmed by the generosity of the company. I walked back to my desk, feeling the walls closing in. I logged onto my computer and, against my better judgment, opened social media. I told myself I was checking for news, but I was really checking the temperature of the water I was drowning in. It didn't take long to find it. Lisa had been busy. She hadn't named me. She was too smart for that. But the posts were precision-guided missiles designed to destroy my character among our shared acquaintances. It takes a village, they say. One post read, set against a background of storm clouds. But what do you do when part of your village decides that buying designer handbags is more important than helping family keep the heat on? Sad to realize that some people only care about blood when it's convenient. Beneath it, the comments were a chorus of sympathetic outrage. "That's horrible. Hun, karma sees everything," wrote a woman I recognized as our old neighbor. "Some people are just selfish," wrote my cousin Emily. "You're a good mama." "Lisa, keep your head up. Must be nice to have zero responsibilities and still play the victim." Another friend of Lisa's added, I stared at the screen, my face burning. They were talking about me, people I had known for years, people I had sent Christmas cards to, were nodding along as my sister painted me as a monster. I wanted to reply. I wanted to post the screenshots of the credit report. I wanted to scream. She stole $30,000 from me. But I didn't. The shame was too great. Admitting that my sister was a thief felt like admitting that my family was broken. And somehow, deep down, I still felt that was my fault. My phone buzzed on the desk. It was Tom. I stared at his name, Lisa's husband, the man who usually stood in the background, looking tired and apologetic. I debated ignoring it, but something in the persistence of the vibration made me pick up. "Hello? Sarah?" Tom's voice was low, hushed, as if he was hiding in a closet. "Look, I don't have much time. Lisa is in the shower." "Tom," I said, sighing, "if this is about the bonus—" "It is, but not like that." He interrupted, his voice cracked. "Sarah, please, I am so sorry about what she said at dinner. I know it was crazy. She gets really intense when she's scared." "Scared of what?" I asked. "Everything," he said. "We are in a hole, Sarah. A big one. It's not just the electric bill. It's everything. The rent is 2 months late. The landlord is talking eviction. They won't let the kids back in daycare until we pay the balance. I'm picking up extra shifts, but it's not enough." I listened to the desperation in his voice. It sounded real, unlike Lisa's angry entitlement. Tom just sounded defeated. "I don't know what to do," he whispered. "She won't let me talk to your parents about how bad it really is. She says she has a plan, but her plan is always just shuffling money around." I gripped the phone tight. The credit report flashed in my mind. Shuffling money. Was that what she called identity theft? "Sarah," he continued, begging now. "I know she asked for half. That's insane. I know. But could you maybe pay the daycare directly? Just so I can go to work without worrying about who is watching the kids? It's $1,200. $1,200. It was a lot of money. But it wasn't 12,000, and it was for the kids." I closed my eyes. I was still trying to be the savior. I was still trying to pay the ransom to get my family back. "I need to see the bills." "Tom," I said, "I'm not handing over cash. If I pay anything, I pay it to the provider, and I need to talk to Lisa, calmly. She's pretty mad." Tom said, "I don't care." I said, "If you want my help, I come over, tonight, and we look at the books." "Okay," he said, sounding relieved and terrified at the same time. "Okay, just come after 6. I drove to their house that evening with a knot of dread in my stomach. They lived in a rental on the south side of the city, a small, siding-clad box that had seen better days. The grass was knee-high. A tricycle lay overturned in the middle of the driveway like a casualty of war. I parked and walked to the door. I could hear the television blaring inside. I knocked. Tom opened the door. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His eyes were red-rimmed, and his t-shirt was wrinkled. "Hey," he mumbled, stepping back to let me in. The smell hit me first. It was a mix of stale diaper pail, fried food, and that distinct damp scent of a house that is never quite clean. The living room was a disaster zone. Toys carpeted the floor, plastic blocks, dolls with matted hair, pieces of puzzles. Laundry was piled on the sofa. Lisa was sitting in the recliner, feeding the baby a bottle. She looked up as I entered, her eyes narrowing. "What is she doing here?" she asked Tom. Not addressing me. "I asked her to come," Tom said, his voice trembling slightly. "We need help." "Lisa, I don't need her help," Lisa snapped. "I don't need her judgment." I stepped over a pile of laundry. "I'm not here to judge. Lisa, Tom told me about the rent and the daycare." She glared at Tom. "You went behind my back? I'm trying to keep a roof over our heads," Tom shouted, his patience finally snapping. I looked around the room. On the kitchen counter, piled high next to a sticky jar of peanut butter, was a stack of envelopes. Some were unopened. Some had red stamps on them. Final notice. Past due. Urgent. I walked over to the counter. Don't touch those, Lisa yelled, shifting the baby to her shoulder. I ignored her. I picked up the top envelope. It was a credit card bill. Not one of the ones I had seen on my report, but a different one. In Tom's name. Lisa, I said, turning to face her. I looked at my credit report. The room went silent. The only sound was the cartoon playing on the TV. Lisa's face didn't crumble. It went hard. Stone hard. So? She said. So? I repeated, incredulous. There are accounts on there I didn't open. A Capital One card. A Best Buy card. They are registered to this address. Lisa stood up, putting the baby in the playpen. She wiped her hands on her leggings. You said I could use them. I stared at her. I stopped breathing for a second. What? You said I could use them, she repeated, her voice rising, gaining confidence. Years ago, when Mom and Dad helped you with your FAFSA, you said, whatever you guys need, we are family. I was 19, I shouted. I was talking about filling out forms, not taking out loans in my name for the next decade. You knew. She insisted, walking toward me. She was gaslighting me in real time, rewriting history with such conviction I almost felt dizzy. You knew we were struggling. You said you wanted to help. You just forgot because you're so busy with your fancy job. I did not forget giving you permission to commit fraud. Lisa, it's not fraud if you agreed to it, she screamed. She walked over to a drawer in the messy kitchen island and yanked it open. She rummaged through a pile of takeout menus and loose batteries before pulling out a crumpled piece of notebook paper. See? She said, shoving it in my face. See? I took the paper. It was a page torn from a spiral notebook. Written in Lisa's loopy, chaotic handwriting were the words, I, Sarah Wood, agree to help Lisa with expenses for the kids using my credit if needed. Family first. At the bottom, there was a signature. Sarah Wood. I stared at the signature. It was shaky. The S was looped wrong. The W was too pointy. It looked like a child's approximation of my signature, or perhaps the attempt of someone tracing it from an old birthday card. I looked up at her. Lisa, I didn't sign this. Yes, you did, she said, her eyes bulging slightly. You signed it at Thanksgiving. 3 years ago, we were drinking wine. You said, I trust you. Lisa, I haven't had wine at Thanksgiving in 5 years because you always drink it all. I said, my voice cold, and I never signed this. This is a forgery. How dare you, she shrieked. You come into my house, you insult my husband, and now you call me a liar? In front of my children? Tom looked at the paper, then at me. He looked sick. Lisa, that doesn't look like Sarah's writing. Whose side are you on? Lisa spun on him. You want to be homeless? You want them to take the car? She is trying to ruin us. She is backing out of her promise because she's a greedy little witch. I dropped the paper on the counter. It fluttered down, landing on top of a past-due electric bill. I am not paying your rent, I said, my voice shaking but loud. And I am not paying for daycare. I am going to the police if you don't close those accounts. Lisa laughed. A high manic sound. Go ahead. Go to the police. Tell them you signed a contract and now you're suffering from buyer's remorse. Mom and Dad know about it. They know you promised. I froze. Mom and Dad know? Of course they do. She sneered. They were there. They remember. I felt the floor tilt. If my parents backed her up, if they swore I signed it, I backed away toward the door. You are sick. Lisa, you need help, and you need to pay what you owe. She screamed after me as I fumbled with the doorknob. I practically ran to my car. I locked the doors and sat there, hyperventilating. My own sister. She had not only stolen my identity, she had fabricated evidence to trap me in it, and she was terrifyingly convinced of her own lie. The summons to my parents' house came 2 days later. It was framed as a peace summit. Sunday dinner, come over. My father texted, let's talk this out like adults. No yelling, just family. I didn't want to go. Every instinct I had screamed at me to run, to change my number, to move to another state, but I needed to know. I needed to know if Lisa was lying about their involvement, or if the rot went all the way to the core. I arrived at 1 o'clock. The house smelled of pot roast, the scent of my childhood Sundays. But the air was thick with tension. Lisa's car was in the driveway. I walked in. They were all in the living room. Lisa was sitting on the sofa, looking small and fragile, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. My mother was sitting next to her, rubbing her back. My father was in his armchair, looking grim. "Sarah, sit down," my father said, gesturing to the empty love seat. I sat. I kept my purse on my shoulder. I didn't plan on staying long. "Lisa tells us you threatened her." My mother started, her voice accusing. "I threatened to report a crime. Mom," I said, "she opened credit cards in my name. She owes almost $40,000. Lisa sobbed. A loud, ragged sound. "She gave me permission." Lisa wailed into the tissue. "She signed the paper." I looked at my parents. "Did you see me sign that paper?" My father shifted in his chair. He didn't meet my eyes. "Sarah, we all remember you saying you wanted to help. You were so proud of your first job. You said, 'If you guys need anything, just ask.' Asking is not stealing my social security number," I shouted. "Lower your voice." My father snapped. "There is no need for histrionics. Lisa showed us the note." My mother said softly, "It looks like your signature." "Sarah." I stared at her. "My mother, the woman who taught me to tie my shoes. You think I signed a blank check for her to ruin my credit? You really believe that?" "I think you made a promise you regret," my mother said, her face hard. "I think you got this big bonus and you got greedy. And now you are trying to rewrite history to make your sister look like a criminal." I stood up. I felt lightheaded. The betrayal was absolute. It wasn't just that they believed her. It was that they preferred her lie to my truth. Her lie kept the family together. Her lie kept the money flowing. My truth destroyed everything. "So that's it," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "You are going to side with the thief. We are siding with family." My father said, "I am family," I cried. "Then act like it," my father yelled, slamming his hand on the armrest. "Honor your word. Pay off the cards. Lisa says she will close them if you pay the balance. That is a fair compromise." "Compromise?" I looked at them, at Lisa's smirk, hidden behind her tissue, at my parents' stony faces. "There is no compromise," I said. "I didn't sign that paper, and I am not paying for her mistakes. I turn to leave. If you walk out that door," my mother said, her voice dropping to a dangerous register, "don't expect us to be here when you come crawling back. You are destroying this family over money." I turned back one last time. "I'm not destroying it. Mom, I'm just the only one who stopped pretending it was whole." I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I closed it gently. It felt like closing the lid on a coffin. I drove home in a daze. I felt numb. The pain was so big it didn't register as pain yet. It just felt like shock. I got into my apartment and locked the door, engaging the deadbolt, then the chain, as if physical locks could keep out the emotional devastation. I sat on my couch and stared at the blank television. It was over. My family was gone. My phone chimed on the coffee table. A distinct, sharp ping. I picked it up. It was an alert from the credit monitoring service I had signed up for immediately after finding the first report. "New inquiry detected." I swiped the screen to open the app. My heart hammered against my ribs. Lender. Speedy Cash. Auto title. Loans. Date. Today, time. 4:45 p.m. 4:45 p.m. I looked at the clock. It was 6 p.m. At 4:45 p.m., I had been sitting in my parents' living room, being lectured about family values. Lisa had been sitting on the couch, crying. But she had her phone in her hand. I remembered. She had been clutching it, while my parents were telling me to be a good sister. While she was sobbing fake tears about being a victim, she was applying for a title loan in my name. She wasn't stopping. She was accelerating. I dropped the phone. The screen cracked against the floor. A single hairline fracture running down the middle. I wasn't dealing with a misunderstanding. I was dealing with a predator. and she was inside the house. I pulled my knees to my chest and started to shake. The numbness was wearing off, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. They wanted a war? They wanted to talk about legal things? I looked at the cracked phone screen. They had no idea what I was capable of when I stopped being the daughter and started being the data analyst. I knew how to track things, I knew how to find patterns, and I was done paying the bill. The crack in my phone screen bisected the name of the lender like a jagged scar. Speedy Cash Auto Title Loans. I stared at it until the backlight timed out and the room plunged back into darkness. My apartment, usually my sanctuary of order and silence, felt violated. The walls seemed to hum with the invisible data streams that were currently strangling my future. I did not sleep. I could not sleep. Instead, I opened my laptop and paid $40 for a comprehensive, forensic-level credit report, the kind that dug deeper than the free apps. I needed to see the bedrock of the damage. When the file downloaded, it was 60 pages long. I sat at my kitchen table, a mug of cold tea beside me, and began to read. It was like reading a biography of a stranger written in the language of debt. I knew my financial life. I knew every debit, every transfer, every interest payment. But the person in this report, this Sarah Wood, was a reckless, chaotic spender who lived on the edge of insolvency. I found the recent accounts first, the ones I had seen on the app, the Capital One card with the $4,500 balance, the Best Buy card, but as I scrolled back, deeper into the history, the timeline stretched further than I had imagined. There was a department store credit card opened 8 years ago. Status: closed, charge-off. 8 years ago, I was 24. I was in grad school, eating ramen and working as a teaching assistant. I had never shopped at that department store in my life. I couldn't afford to. I scrolled back further. A general-purpose credit card, opened when I was 20. Status: paid in full, closed by consumer. 20. I was a sophomore in college. I remembered that year vividly. I was studying for finals, panicked about my GPA. I didn't have a credit card then. I used a debit card and a wad of cash my grandmother sent me for birthdays. I closed my eyes, trying to overlay the dates on the report with the timeline of my life. The account from when I was 20, that was the spring semester, the same spring my parents had called me, frantic, saying there was a paperwork error with my financial aid. My father had said they needed to update the FAFSA forms immediately or I would lose my grants. I had spent an hour on the phone with him, reading out my social security number, my driver's license number, my mother's maiden name, every identifier I possessed, and the department store card? 8 years ago. That was the summer I moved back home for 2 months between leases. I remembered Lisa coming into my room, breathless, saying she had ordered a special birthday gift for Tom but missed the delivery. She needed to pick it up at the depot, but her license had expired and she hadn't renewed it yet. "Just let me borrow yours. Sarah," she had said. "We look enough alike. They won't check closely. Please, it is for Tom." I had given it to her. I had handed her my driver's license because she was my sister and it was a birthday gift. The pattern was so clear it was blinding. The fraud wasn't an anomaly. It wasn't a recent act of desperation. It was the architecture of our relationship. Every time I had trusted them with a piece of myself, they had taken a piece of my credit. I printed the report. The printer rhythmically spat out page after page, a steady mechanical beat that sounded like a gavel coming down. I didn't call them. I didn't text. I showered, dressed in my work clothes, armor, I told myself, and drove to my parents' house. It was Tuesday morning. My father would be home, tinkering in the garage. My mother would be watching daytime television. I didn't knock. I used the key I had carried on my ring since high school. The key that symbolized a home I could always return to. I unlocked the front door and walked in. My mother was in the living room, folding laundry on the sofa. She looked up, startled by the intrusion. "Sarah?" she asked, clutching a towel. "What are you doing here? You should be at work. Where is Dad?" I asked. My voice was calm, but it felt hollow, as if it were coming from someone else. "He is in the garden," she said. Standing up, "Sarah, You look terrible. Are you sick? I walked to the sliding glass door and opened it. Dad! My father looked up from a patch of weeds he was attacking with a hoe. He saw my face and stopped. He dropped the hoe and walked slowly toward the house, wiping his hands on his jeans. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where, days ago, they had told me to be the bigger person. I placed the stack of papers in the center of the table. It made a heavy thud. What is this? My father asked, eyeing the stack warily. That is a list of every time you and Lisa stole from me. I said, Sarah, don't start this again, my mother said, reaching for the papers. We told you. Lisa is going to pay it back. I put my hand on the stack, stopping her. Look at page 4. I said, look at the date. May 8 years ago. A department store card. Lisa opened it using my driver's license, the license I gave her because she said she needed to pick up a package. My mother froze. She didn't look at the paper. She looked at my father. And page 10. I continued. 10 years ago, a credit card. Opened the same week you guys helped me with my financial aid forms. The week you said there was an emergency with my grants. My father sighed. It was a long, defeated sound. He pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. Sarah, he said, you have to understand. Understand what? I asked. Understand that you used your 20-year-old daughter as a credit mule? It wasn't like that, my mother said quickly, her voice high and defensive. It was a bad year. Tom had lost his job. Lisa was pregnant with Haley. They had nothing. No diapers. No food in the fridge. They couldn't get credit. Their scores were shot. So you gave her mine? I asked, without asking me. We didn't think it would matter, my mother cried. We thought we would pay it off before the bill even came. It was supposed to be temporary, just to get them through the month. But you didn't pay it off, I said, tapping the paper. It says here paid by consumer 2 years later. That means you carried a balance in my name for 2 years. While I was eating instant noodles and thinking I was being responsible, you were running up debt in my name. We paid it, my father said, slamming his hand on the table. We paid every cent. You never knew. You were never hurt. I am hurt now, I shouted. I am hurt because my credit score is tanking. I am hurt because I have $38,000 in debt I didn't authorize. I am hurt because my entire financial life is a lie you guys constructed. You are being dramatic, my mother said, smoothing the tablecloth with trembling fingers. Nobody got hurt. We protected you. We made sure those old accounts were closed. You didn't protect me, Mom. You used me. And you taught Lisa that it was okay. You taught her that my name was just another resource she could harvest when she ran out of money. That is why she is doing it now. Because you showed her how. Lisa is desperate, my father grumbled. She is not a criminal. Identity theft is a crime. Dad, it is a felony. Do not say that word, my mother hissed. She pointed a finger at me. Do not you dare talk about felonies in this house. She is your sister. She has children. If you make this a legal thing, you will destroy her life. Is that what you want? To see your nieces visiting their mother in jail? I stared at them. They were terrified, not of the moral weight of what they had done, but of the consequences. They wanted me to absorb the blow, just like I had always done. They wanted me to be the sponge that soaked up the family mess so they could keep pretending everything was fine. I want the accounts closed. I said, all of them, today. We can't close them today, my father said. The balances. We don't have the cash to pay them off immediately. Then Lisa needs to figure it out. I said, she can't. My mother said, you know she can't. That is why we need you to help. Just pay them off. Sarah, you have the bonus. Pay them off, close them, and we will sign whatever IOU you want. We will pay you back a little every month, I promise. I looked at my mother's pleading eyes. For a second, just a split second, I wavered. It would be so easy. I could write a check. The noise would stop. The family would go back to its uneasy peace. I would be the hero, the martyr. But then I remembered the notification. Speedy Cash Auto Title Loan. She did it yesterday, I said softly, while she was sitting here crying. She applied for another loan. My parents went silent. She didn't. My mother whispered, "She did. I have the alert. She isn't stopping. Mom, she is accelerating. If I pay these off, she will just open more. She is an addict. And you are her dealers." I stood up. "I am going to work. I have a meeting. But I'm telling you this now. If those accounts are not closed, I am taking steps to close them myself. And I don't care what it takes." I walked out of the house. My mother was calling my name, telling me to come back, to not be so hard-hearted. I didn't turn around. I drove to work on autopilot. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard, my knuckles were white. I felt sick, physically sick. The revelation that my parents had been the original architects of the fraud was a betrayal so deep I couldn't find the bottom of it. When I got to the office, I tried to focus. I had spreadsheets to analyze. I had a team to manage. But the numbers on the screen kept swimming. At 2:00, an email popped up in my inbox. From Compliance Department. Subject: Urgent Background Check Inquiry. My heart stopped. I opened the email. "Dear Sarah, as part of the final vetting process for your promotion to senior analyst and the associated security clearance for client financial data, we conducted a standard background refresh. We have received a flag regarding adverse financial activity linked to your Social Security number. Specifically, there appear to be multiple accounts in delinquency and a high debt-to-income ratio that was not disclosed on your updated ethics form. Please come to my office immediately." I stared at the screen. The room felt like it was tilting. This was it. This was the consequence. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about my livelihood, my reputation. I worked in data. I worked in trust. If I was seen as financially unstable, as a liability, I was done. I walked to the compliance office like a woman walking to the gallows. Karen was there, her face grave. "Close the door." "Sarah," she said. I sat down. "I don't understand," Karen said, tapping a file on her desk. "You have been with us for 5 years. Your record is spotless. But this report, it looks like you are spiraling. 3 accounts in collections? A title loan inquiry?" "It's not me," I said, my voice cracking. "I know how it looks. Karen, but it is not me. I am a victim of identity theft." "Do you have a police report?" she asked. I hesitated. A police report meant arresting Lisa. It meant handcuffs. It meant my mother screaming. I am in the process of filing one." I lied. "It is a complex situation. It involves a family member." Karen softened slightly, but her eyes remained professional, detached. "I am sorry to hear that, Sarah, truly. But you know the policy. We handle sensitive financial data. We cannot have employees with compromised financial leverage. It creates a vulnerability." "I know." I said, "I need documentation. Sarah, I need proof that these debts are not yours. I need an affidavit of fraud. I need a police report number. Until I have those, I have to put a hold on your promotion. And," she paused, "and we will need to place you on administrative leave pending the investigation. We can't have you accessing client accounts until this is cleared up." Administrative leave. I felt the blood drain from my face. They were suspending me. "Karen, please." "I can fix this. Give me 24 hours. I can give you 48, she said. "But Sarah? Get that police report. If this is family, that is tragic. But if it costs you your career, it is a tragedy you can't afford." I left the office carrying a box of my personal items. Just in case, walking past my team, past the desk where I had earned that bonus, I felt a burning shame. I hadn't done anything wrong. I had done everything right. And yet, I was the one walking out in disgrace. I sat in my car in the parking garage and screamed. I screamed until my throat felt raw. Then, I wiped my face. I fixed my makeup in the rearview mirror. And I called Lisa. She didn't answer. I called again, and again. On the 4th try, she picked up. "What?" she snapped. "Meet me at the Starbucks on 3rd Street. I said, "In 30 minutes. I am busy. Sarah, I have kids. If you are not there in 30 minutes, I am going to the police precinct instead. I said, "and I am bringing the credit report with the dates from 10 years ago." There was a silence on the other end. "Fine," she spat. "I arrived first. I bought a black coffee I knew I wouldn't drink. I set up my laptop. I opened a document I had drafted in the car. A simple, brutal legal agreement. Acknowledgement of debt and unauthorized use of identity. Lisa walked in 10 minutes late. She was wearing sunglasses, even though it was overcast. She looked ragged. Her hair was unwashed, and she wore a stained, oversized hoodie. She didn't buy a drink. She slid into the chair opposite me and crossed her arms. "Make it quick," she said. I slid the paper across the table. "Sign this," I said. She looked at it. "What is it?" "It is a confession." I said, "It says that you, Lisa Wood, used my personal information without my consent to open the following accounts. It lists the account numbers and the balances. It says that you accept full responsibility for the debt and that you agree to a repayment plan." She laughed. A harsh, incredulous sound. "I am not signing that. That is like signing a warrant. It is the only thing that keeps me from filing a police report today." I said. I leaned forward. "I just got suspended." "Lisa?" Her smirk faltered. "What?" "Work found the accounts. The background check flagged them. They put me on leave. If I don't prove this debt isn't mine in 48 hours, I lose my job. I lose my career." Lisa looked down at the table. "Well, that's not my fault. You should have told them." "I am telling them," I said, struggling to keep my voice down. "But I need proof. I need you to admit it. If you sign this, I can show it to my compliance officer. It proves the debt is yours. It might save my job without me having to have you arrested." She picked up the paper, her hands shaking. "If I sign this, you can still sue me," she said. "I can sue you anyway. Lisa. I have the IP addresses. I have the signatures. I have the dates. I know about the card from when I was 20. I know about the department store card. I know Mom and Dad helped you." She looked up, fear finally piercing through her defiance. "You know? I know everything." She slumped back in her chair. Tears started to leak from under her sunglasses. "It wasn't supposed to be like this." She sobbed. I needed help. The kids needed things. Tom is useless. Mom and Dad said it was okay. They said you wouldn't mind. They said you were the strong one. I am not strong enough to carry $40,000 of your debt. Lisa, it was for the kids." She whimpered. "It was always for the kids. Haley needed braces. Leo needed his asthma meds. What was I supposed to do? Let them suffer while you went on vacation?" "I didn't go on vacation," I hissed. "I paid my student loans. I lived in a studio apartment. I ate peanut butter sandwiches." "You have no idea what it is like," she said, wiping her nose with her sleeve. "To hear your kid wheeze and know you can't afford the inhaler, you have no idea." "No, I don't," I said, "but stealing from me didn't fix it. Lisa, it just dragged me into the hole with you." I pulled a pen from my bag and set it on the paper. "Sign it, and I promise I will give you time to pay it back. I won't garnish your wages immediately. I won't take the house, but I need this paper to save my life." She looked at the pen. She looked at me. Her expression shifted. The sadness evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp resentment. She hated me. In that moment, she hated me more than she hated her poverty. She hated me because I had the power to make her sign. She grabbed the pen. She scribbled her name at the bottom of the page, pressing so hard the paper nearly tore. "There," she said, shoving the paper back at me. "Are you happy? You act like some loan shark, coming after your own sister." I took the paper. I checked the signature. It was real this time. "I am not a loan shark. Lisa, I am the bank you robbed." I put the document in my bag. "Close the accounts," I said, "or I will." I stood up and walked out. I didn't look back. I felt a strange mixture of relief and nausea. I had the proof. I could save my job. But looking at my sister's face as she signed, I knew I had broken something that could never be fixed. I went home. I scanned the document and emailed it to Karen immediately. Attached is a sworn affidavit from the responsible party accepting liability for the fraudulent accounts. I wrote, "I will await your instructions." Then I poured a glass of wine and sat in the dark. At 9 p.m., my phone started buzzing. Voicemail from Lisa. I didn't answer. I let it go to voicemail. Then another. Then another. Finally, I pressed play on the first one. "You think you're so smart." Lisa's voice slurred slightly. She sounded like she had been drinking. "You think because you have a piece of paper you're better than me? You weaponize the law against a mother. You are sick." I played the next one. "I told Mom what you made me do. She's crying. Sarah, she's heartbroken. She says you forced me. That's what I'm going to tell people. That you coerced me. That you bullied me." I played the third one. Her voice was a scream now. "Go ahead. Show that paper to your boss. Show it to the world. Tell everyone you're trying to ruin a mother's life over some numbers on a screen. You're going to be alone. Sarah, you're going to have all your money and your precious job, and you're going to be all alone. Nobody loves a bean counter who puts her sister in a corner. Nobody." I deleted the messages. I blocked the number. I sat in the silence of my apartment. The city lights outside were blurry through the tears in my eyes. I had the document. I had the truth. But as I sat there, tracing the rim of my wine glass, I realized the terrifying truth of her words. I was right. I was legally, morally, and financially right. And I had never felt more isolated in my entire life. The war had started, and I had just won the first battle. But the cost was already higher than the $25,000 bonus I had been so proud of. I had bought my freedom, but the price was my family. I closed my eyes and waited for the morning, and the next wave. The digital assault began on a Thursday morning. 3 days after I had forced my sister to sign the confession in the coffee shop. I was sitting at my kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee and preparing to log into work remotely. My administrative leave was still in effect. Though Karen had indicated the affidavit I submitted was a promising first step, I felt fragile, like glass that had been glued back together but would shatter at a high pitch. Then, the notifications started. It wasn't a trickle. It was a deluge. My phone buzzed, then dinged, then buzzed again in a rapid staccato rhythm that made my pulse spike. I picked it up. Facebook, Instagram, Messenger. I opened Facebook first. The algorithm, helpful as always, had placed Lisa's post at the very top of my feed. It was a masterpiece of victimhood, a long, rambling block of text accompanied by a grainy black and white photo of her holding my niece and nephew. Looking tired and noble. I usually keep my struggles private. The post began, but sometimes you realize that the people who are supposed to be your village are actually the ones burning it down. It is hard enough being a mom in this economy, trying to keep food on the table and a roof over my babies' heads. But it is harder when you have family members who are blessed with wealth and success, people with no kids, no real responsibilities, who would rather watch their own flesh and blood suffer than share a single drop of their abundance. I asked for help. I begged for mercy. Instead, I got judgment. I got legal threats. I got treated like a criminal for trying to survive. Hug your babies tight tonight, friends. You never know when the people you love will turn on you for a few extra zeros in their bank account. I read it twice. My breath hitched in my throat. She didn't name me. She was careful enough to avoid a libel suit. But she didn't have to. Everyone knew who she was talking to. I scrolled to the comments. "Stay strong. Mama," wrote a woman I knew from high school. "Karma comes for the greedy. That is disgusting," wrote my Aunt Linda. My father's sister. "Family helps family. Period. If you have it, you give it. Shame on her. Some people lose their souls when they get a little money," wrote a stranger, a friend of a friend. "She will be lonely in her big empty house one day." I felt physically ill. They were talking about me, in my 600-square-foot apartment, me, who had just paid off my student loans, me, whose identity had been stolen by the very person playing the martyr. A direct message popped up from a girl I hadn't spoken to since college. "Hey Sarah, saw Lisa's post. I don't know what's going on, but threatening to sue your sister?" That's pretty low. Maybe check your priorities. I dropped the phone on the table as if it were burning. I wanted to reply. I wanted to type. She stole $40,000 from me. She committed felonies. But I knew it wouldn't matter. In the court of public opinion, the struggling mother always beats the childless career woman. Lisa had weaponized her poverty and her children, turning them into a shield I couldn't penetrate without looking like a monster. I sat there, shaking, realizing the trap was perfect. If I defended myself, I looked defensive and petty. If I stayed silent, I looked guilty. My phone buzzed again. I flinched. It was a text from Megan, my cousin on my mother's side. Megan lived in Chicago, 3 hours away. We weren't close, but we exchanged Christmas cards. She was a paralegal at a large corporate firm. "Sarah, call me. Now." I stared at the screen. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want another lecture about family obligation. Please. The next text read, "I saw the post. I know what she's doing. Call me." I took a deep breath and dialed. Megan answered on the first ring. "Sarah, are you okay?" "I don't know," I stammered. "Did you see what she wrote?" "I saw it," Megan said, her voice brisk and professional. "It is classic deflection. Listen to me. I need you to take the emotion out of this for a second. What exactly did she do?" I hesitated. It was hard to say it out loud to family. "She opened credit cards in my name," I whispered, "and a loan, about $40,000 worth." Megan let out a low whistle. "Sarah, that is not a family dispute. That is grand larceny. That is identity theft." "I know." I said, "I made her sign an affidavit admitting it. That is why she is so angry." "You have a signed confession?" Megan asked, her voice sharpening. "That is good. That is very good. But you need to do more. Have you filed a police report?" "No." I said, "I can't. If I file a report, she gets a record. She could go to jail. She has kids." "Megan, Sarah, listen to me." Megan said, "I work in litigation. I see this all the time. People think they are protecting their family by not filing, but they are actually enabling a predator. If you don't file a report, the credit bureaus won't take you seriously. You can't scrub this debt without a police report number. The affidavit helps with your job. Maybe. But it doesn't clear your credit history. But the kids are in danger because their mother is a financial wrecking ball." Megan interrupted, "And what happens when she does it again?" "Because she will. She got away with it for years." I went silent. She was right. "You need to place a credit freeze on all 3 bureaus immediately," Megan instructed. TransUnion, Equifax, Experian. Lock it down so tight she can't even buy a pack of gum in your name. And Sarah, you need to dig deeper. "Deeper?" "Identity thieves usually start small and close to home," Megan said. "If she had your social security number, she had access to everything. Check your old accounts. Check anything that might have your name on it from when you were a minor. Parents sometimes complicate things." The warning hung in the air. Parents sometimes complicate things. I hung up with Megan, promising to freeze my credit. I spent the next hour doing just that, navigating the websites, setting up PINs, building a digital fortress around what was left of my name. But Megan's last comment gnawed at me. "Check anything from when you were a minor." I went to my closet. On the top shelf, shoved behind a stack of winter sweaters, was a plastic tote bin labeled "Important Papers." It held my birth certificate, my passport, and a folder of old documents I had taken from my parents' house when I moved out, things I thought I might need but never looked at. Old report cards, vaccination records, savings bonds. I pulled the bin down. I sat on the floor and opened it. The smell of old paper and dust rose up. I sifted through the folder, grade school diplomas, a ribbon from a swim meet, and then a thick envelope from a bank that no longer existed. Having been bought out by a larger conglomerate a decade ago, inside was a statement: custodial account for Sarah Wood, minor. I remembered this. My grandfather Gene, my father's father, had been a stern, frugal man who worked in a steel mill for 40 years. When I was 16, just before he died, he had held my hand in the hospital. "I put something away for you. Sarah Bear." He had wheezed. For school. You're the smart one. You go to college. I had asked my parents about it after the funeral. My father had waved it off. Oh. Grandpa was confused at the end. He had said, there wasn't much there. We used it for the funeral costs. I looked at the statement in my hand. It was dated the year I turned 18. Balance, $15,400. $15,000. I turned the page. Transaction history, August 14th. Withdrawal, cashier's check. Closing balance, amount, $15,400. Authorized by custodian, Robert Wood. August 14th. The summer before I started college. I stared at the date. August 14th. That was the same week Lisa had moved into her first apartment with Tom. They had broken up, then got back together, and decided to move into a nicer place to start fresh. I remembered the apartment. It had a balcony. It had new carpet. They had bought new furniture. My parents had told me they helped Lisa out a little with the deposit. I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. It started in my stomach and radiated out to my fingertips. My grandfather hadn't been confused. The money was there. It was meant for my tuition. It was meant to keep me from taking out the loans I had spent the last decade slaving to repay. And my father had taken it. He had taken my grandfather's legacy to me and handed it to Lisa to buy a sofa and a security deposit on an apartment she got evicted from 2 years later. I couldn't breathe. The air in the room felt too thin. I gasped, clutching the paper. My vision blurred at the edges. I scrambled up from the floor. The paper crinkled in my fist. I needed to get out. I needed air. I ran to my car. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove. I drove until I was in the parking lot of my parents' neighborhood park. The place where I used to swing on the swing set and dream about being an astronaut. I turned off the engine. I leaned my forehead against the steering wheel and sobbed. I cried for the 18-year-old girl who had worked 2 jobs in the cafeteria to pay for textbooks. I cried for the trust that was shattered. I cried because I finally understood the fundamental truth of my family. I was the crop they harvested to feed Lisa. I sat there for an hour until my eyes were swollen and my throat hurt. Then, I put the car in gear. I drove to their house. My father was in the driveway, washing his truck. He looked up as I pulled in. He smiled tentatively, likely thinking I had come to apologize, to make peace after the Facebook post. I got out of the car. I didn't have a coat. I walked up the driveway, holding the statement like a weapon. "Sarah?" he said, turning off the hose. I held up the paper. "Where is it?" I asked. My voice was raspy. "Where is what?" he asked, squinting at the paper. "Grandpa's money. The $15,000. Where is it?" His face changed instantly. The smile vanished, replaced by a guarded, shuttered look. He wiped his hands on a rag. "Sarah, that was a long time ago. You told me there was no money," I screamed. "You told me he was confused, but you withdrew it. You signed for it the week before I left for college." My mother came out onto the porch, drawn by the shouting. "What is going on?" She found the account statement. My father said, not looking at her. "From Dad." My mother stopped on the top step. She crossed her arms. "Sarah, honey, listen," she began. "Did you give it to Lisa?" I demanded. "Did you give my college fund to Lisa for her apartment?" "We didn't give it to her," my father said, his voice rising. "We used it for the family. Lisa was in a bad spot. She needed a safe place to live. You were going to college anyway. You had scholarships. You had loans available. Lisa didn't have those options. It was my money," I yelled. "Grandpa left it to me." "It was family money," my mother shouted back, stepping down onto the driveway. "Why do you always have to keep score? Why is it always mine, mine, mine with you? Because you stole it." I was crying again, hot, angry tears. "You let me take out $40,000 in loans. You watched me work double shifts. You watched me skip spring breaks and eat ramen. And all the while, you had given my safety net to her? She needed it more," my mother insisted. "She was pregnant. Sarah, She didn't tell us at the time, but she was pregnant with Haley. She needed a home. What were we supposed to do? Let your sister live in a dump while you sat on a pile of cash you didn't even need yet? I didn't need it? I laughed. A hysterical, broken sound. I spent 10 years paying it back. 10 years. And look at you, my father said, gesturing at me with the rag. You made it. You are smart. You are employable. You have a great career. You survived. Lisa just didn't catch the same breaks. She isn't like you. Sarah, she needs help. We had to level the playing field. Level the playing field? I stared at them. They honestly believed it. They believed that penalizing my competence to subsidize her incompetence was moral. They believed that because I could suffer and survive, it was their right to make me do so. You didn't level the field, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. You broke my legs so we would run at the same speed. That is a terrible thing to say, my mother said, looking affronted. We love you both equally. No, you don't, I said. You love her needs, and you love my ability to pay for them. I turned around. Sarah, wait, my father called. Don't go like this. We can work this out. We always intended to pay you back. When? I asked, spinning around. When were you going to pay me back? When you died? Maybe, he shouted. Yes, when we sell the house. We always said we would make it right in the end. I looked at the house, the beige siding, the overgrown lawn. It was their only asset. And knowing them, knowing Lisa, it was probably mortgaged to the hilt to pay for another one of her crises. I don't want your promises. I said, they bounce. I got in my car and backed out of the driveway. I felt lighter, but it was a terrifying lightness, the lack of gravity that comes when the ground falls away. I went home. I called Megan back. You were right, I said. They took a college fund, 15 grand. I am so sorry. Sarah, Megan said gently. I sat at my computer. I pulled up the website for the Federal Trade Commission. I filled out the identity theft affidavit. I listed every account. I listed the dates. I attached the PDF of the confession Lisa signed. Then I opened the tab for the police department. File a report online. I hovered the mouse over the button. I thought about Lisa. I thought about Haley and Leo. I thought about the text Lisa had sent. You're trying to ruin a mother's life. If I clicked that button, the police would come. They would question her. She would have a criminal record. She might lose her job, what little job she had. The kids would see their mother treated like a criminal. I couldn't do it. Not yet. The guilt, planted deep in my marrow by 30 years of conditioning, was still too strong. I could fight for my money, but I couldn't be the one to put handcuffs on my sister. I closed the tab. I submitted the FTC affidavit and the credit freeze confirmations to Karen at work. It was enough to satisfy the compliance department for now. It proved I was taking action. It proved I was a victim, not a participant. But the war wasn't over. 2 weeks passed. The silence from my family was deafening. No calls, no texts, just the lingering radiation of Lisa's Facebook post, which had garnered 64 likes and 20 comments of support. Then, the calendar reminder popped up. Mom-Dad's 40th anniversary. I had RSVP'd months ago. I had bought a gift, a digital picture frame preloaded with photos of the family. I stared at the notification. I shouldn't go. Any sane person wouldn't go. But I went. I went because I needed to see if it was really gone. I went because I needed to look them in the eye one more time. I went because leaving the family is a death, and you have to attend the funeral. The party was at their house, a casual backyard barbecue. When I arrived, the driveway was full. I parked down the street and walked up. I could hear music. I could smell burgers on the grill. I walked into the backyard. There were about 20 people there. Aunts, uncles, neighbors, people who had commented on Lisa's post. The conversation died down as I entered. Heads turned. A hush fell over the patio. I felt the collective weight of their judgment. To them, I wasn't Sarah the victim. I was Sarah the wealthy, selfish sister who was suing the struggling mother. I walked over to the gift table and placed the wrapped box down. Hello, Everyone, I said. My voice sounded thin in the open air. Hi. Sarah, Aunt Linda said, her tone chilly. We didn't think you'd come. It's a big day. I said, 40 years. Lisa was by the cooler, getting a juice box for Leo. She looked up. She was wearing a new dress. She looked good, better than she had in the coffee shop. She saw me and smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who has the crowd on their side. She walked over to where the kids were playing on the grass. She crouched down loud enough for everyone to hear. Come here. Babies, she cooed. Come here to Mommy. Haley and Leo ran over. Lisa wrapped her arms around them, pulling them into a tight huddle. She looked directly at me. Now, listen, she said, her voice pitched to Carrie. We have to be very quiet and good today. Aunt Sarah is here, and you know she doesn't like it when little families ask for help. She likes her space, so let's not bother her, okay? We don't want to make Aunt Sarah angry again. Leo looked at me, his big eyes wide with confusion. Is Aunt Sarah mad at us? No, baby, Lisa said, stroking his hair. She has different priorities. She loves her money very much, and we have to respect that. The silence in the yard was absolute. My parents were standing by the grill. My father looked down at his shoes. My mother busied herself with the potato salad, refusing to meet my gaze. Nobody said a word. Nobody told Lisa to stop. Nobody defended me. I stood there, feeling the blood drain from my face. It wasn't just an insult. It was an excommunication. She was rewriting my identity in real time, poisoning the next generation against me. I looked at my niece and nephew. I loved them. I had bought them birthday presents. I had started that college fund for them. But I realized, with a clarity that cut like a knife, that I could never have a relationship with them as long as Lisa controlled the narrative. Every gift I gave would be spun as manipulation. Every visit would be used as leverage. I looked at my parents. They were letting it happen. They were allowing her to sacrifice me to keep the peace. I didn't make a scene. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just nodded. Okay, I said softly. I hear you. I turned around. I walked back through the gate. I walked down the street to my car. I sat in the driver's seat. I didn't start the engine immediately. I looked at the house in the rearview mirror. It looked small. It looked like a trap I had finally chewed my leg off to escape. I started the car. I drove back to the city. I didn't go to my apartment. I drove to a neighborhood on the north side, a quiet, leafy district far from the suburbs. I parked in front of a coffee shop and pulled out my phone. I opened a real estate app. I typed in the search bar, rentals, north side. I wasn't just looking for a new apartment. I was looking for a new jurisdiction. I was looking for a place where nobody knew the name Wood. I scrolled through the listings. 2. Bedroom, balcony, secure entry. Secure entry. That sounded good. I sent an inquiry. Then, I opened my contacts. I scrolled to Mom and Dad. I hit block caller. I scrolled to Lisa. I hit block caller. I sat there in the quiet of the car, watching the sun go down over the city. I felt a profound, aching loneliness, but underneath it, there was something else, a hard, cold nugget of resolve. They thought I was the villain. They thought I was selfish. Fine. If I was going to be the villain, I might as well stop paying for the privilege of being their victim. I put the phone in my pocket and drove away. The rearview mirror was empty. The envelope was waiting on my desk when I returned from lunch. It was not the crisp, white corporate stationery I was accustomed to, nor was it the friendly, colorful cardstock of a wedding invitation. It was made of cheap, recycled gray paper, and the window revealed my name and my workplace address in a font that looked aggressive even through the plastic. Sarah Wood. Urgent, personal, and confidential. I sat down, my heart doing a strange, fluttering kick against my ribs. I had been back at work for 2 weeks, operating under a cloud of probationary watchfulness. I had frozen my credit. I had submitted the affidavit. I thought I had erected a dam strong enough to hold back the floodwaters of my sister's chaos. I slit the envelope open. Notice of intent to garnish wages. The words seemed to vibrate on the page. Creditor. Apex Asset Management. On behalf of Quick Cash Personal Loans, principal amount, $5,000. Interest and fees, $2,400. Total due, $7,400. The letter informed me, in brutal, legalistic prose, that because I had failed to respond to previous attempts to collect on a loan originating 14 months ago, they were now seeking a court order to garnish 25% of my disposable earnings directly from my employer until the debt was satisfied. I stopped breathing. 14 months ago, Lisa had taken out a personal loan over a year ago, long before the bonus, long before the dinner. She had been bleeding me dry while smiling across the Thanksgiving table. Sarah? I looked up. Marcus, my manager, was standing at the entrance to my cubicle. He wasn't smiling. He was holding a piece of paper that looked identical to the one in my hand. "Can we chat in the conference room?" he asked. It wasn't a question. I followed him. The walk felt like a march to the scaffold. We sat in the same room where he had given me the bonus, the room where I had felt so triumphant just a month ago. Now, the air felt thin and cold. "We received a notice today," Marcus said, placing the paper on the table. "A garnishment order is pending." "I know," I whispered. "I just opened my copy." "Sarah," Marcus said, leaning back and crossing his arms, "you know I value you. You are one of the best analysts we have, but you work with client financial data. We have strict compliance rules. We cannot have employees who are being chased by debt collectors for defaulted loans. It creates a liability. It looks like you are compromised. It is not my loan," I said, my voice shaking. "Marcus, I told Karen in compliance. This is identity theft. I know what you told Karen," Marcus said gently, "and she accepted your affidavit as a placeholder. But this is a legal escalation. If they are garnishing your wages, it means a judge signed off on the debt validity somewhere along the line. Probably a default judgment because you didn't show up to court." "I didn't know about court," I said. "I never got the notices." "Because they probably went to the address on file for the loan," Marcus pointed out, "which I assume is not yours." "It isn't," I said. "It is my sister's." Marcus sighed. "Look, Sarah, I want to believe you, but from the company's perspective, this is a mess if this garnishment goes through. If we have to start processing payments to a collection agency from your payroll, HR is going to have a major problem. You could lose your clearance, and if you lose your clearance, you can't do this job." He leaned forward. "You need to make this go away. Not with affidavits, not with promises. You need a police report number. You need a lawyer. You need to show us that you are fighting this with the full weight of the law. Otherwise, we have to let you go." I nodded. I couldn't speak. The humiliation was a physical weight, pressing down on my shoulders. I was 32 years old. I was responsible. And I was being dressed down because my sister had decided my credit score was her piggy bank. "I will handle it," I said. Today, I walked out of the office. I didn't go back to my desk. I went to the parking lot, got into my car, and drove to the police station. For weeks, I had hesitated. I had let the guilt, the "don't ruin a mother's life" narrative hold me back. But as I merged onto the highway, I realized that narrative was a suicide pact. My parents and Lisa were willing to let me lose my career, my reputation, and my financial future just to protect Lisa from the consequences of her own actions. They weren't protecting the family. They were sacrificing me to save her. I walked into the precinct. It smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. "I would like to file a report for identity theft." I told the officer at the desk. "Name?" he asked, not looking up. "Sarah Wood." I sat with the detective for an hour. I laid it all out. The credit reports, the affidavit Lisa had signed, the new collection letter, the college fund statement from my grandfather. When I handed him the affidavit, the confession I had made her sign, he raised his eyebrows. "She signed this?" he asked, admitting she opened the accounts. "Yes," I said. "Well, that makes our job easier," he said. "This is a confession to a felony. Ms. Wood, you understand that once we open this, it is out of your hands? The district attorney picks it up. You can't just call us in a week and ask us to drop it because your mom is crying. I looked at him. I thought about the garnishment letter on Marcus's desk. I thought about the Aunt Sarah hates families speech at the anniversary party. I understand. I said, file it. I left the station with a case number printed on a small blue card. It felt heavier than it looked. From there, I drove to the office of a consumer rights attorney Megan had recommended. His name was Mr. Henderson. He was a small, sharp-eyed man with an office that smelled of old books and aggressive litigation. I gave him everything: the case number, the documents, the story of the college fund. He listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he took off his glasses and cleaned them slowly. You have a very strong case for the identity theft, he said. The confession is the nail in the coffin. But the college fund? That is interesting. Interesting how? I asked. Custodial account is a fiduciary arrangement, he explained. Your father, as the custodian, had a legal duty to use those funds for your benefit, using them to pay for your sister's apartment deposit. That is a breach of fiduciary duty. It is civil theft. Can I get it back? I asked. Mr. Henderson smiled, a dry, thin expression. We can certainly try. We will attach it to the civil suit. We are going to attack this on two fronts. Sarah, the criminal side, which the police will handle, and the civil side, where we sue your sister for the debt and your parents for the misappropriated funds. We are going to secure a judgment. And if they have equity in that house, we are going to lien it. Do it, I said. The fallout was immediate. 2 days later, the police paid a visit to 1402 Maple Drive. They didn't arrest Lisa, not yet, but they brought her in for questioning. They fingerprinted her. They read her rights. My phone, which I had unblocked for emergency purposes, lit up like a Christmas tree. It was my father. What have you done? He screamed the moment I picked up. I filed a report. Dad, I told you I would. The police were here, he shouted. They took your sister to the station. In a squad car. The neighbors were watching. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that is? More embarrassing than having my wages garnished at work? I asked, my voice cold. Because that is what happened to me on Tuesday. A collection agency tried to take my paycheck because Lisa defaulted on a loan you guys probably knew about. We didn't know about that one, my father insisted. I don't care. Dad, it doesn't matter anymore. I almost lost my job. I had to choose between my career and her record. I chose me. You are going nuclear, he yelled. You are tearing this family apart over money. Lisa tore this family apart when she stole my name. I shouted back. I hung up. I blocked him again. The silence that followed was different this time. It wasn't the silence of being ignored. It was the silence of a trench warfare stalemate. I knew they were panicking. I knew they were scrambling. A week later, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. Sarah, it's Tom. Please, can we meet? Just for 10 minutes. I promise I'm not coming to yell at you. I debated it, but Tom was the only one who had ever shown a flicker of conscience. I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop near my office. Public, safe, and on my turf. He looked terrible. He had lost weight, and his skin had a gray, papery quality. He sat down opposite me and didn't order anything. How is she? I asked. She's a mess. Sarah, Tom said, rubbing his face. She's terrified. The lawyer says she could do actual time, or probation, but she'll have a felony record. She won't be able to get a job. She wasn't working anyway. Tom, I said, I know. He said, I know. He looked down at the table. There is something else, he said softly. What? The police. When they were asking her questions, they asked about the money, where it went, and she told you it was for bills, right? For the kids? Yes. Tom let out a shaky breath. It wasn't just bills. I mean, yeah, we have bills. But, Sarah, she has a problem. What kind of problem? Gambling. Tom whispered. Those apps on her phone. Slots. Bingo. Sports betting. She's addicted to them. She sits there at night, while I'm asleep, and she just plays. She thinks she's going to win big and fix everything. She calls it investing. I stared at him. The payday loans, the constant need for cash, the desperation. It all clicked. It wasn't just poverty, it was a compulsion. She lost the college fund money on slots? I asked, horrified. Some of it, Tom admitted. And the loan money. She took that $5,000 from Quick Cash and lost $3,000 of it in a weekend. She thought she could turn it into $10,000 and pay you back before you noticed. Does Mom and Dad know? No. Tom said, she lies to them too. She tells them it's for daycare or car repairs. They believe her because they want to believe her. Why are you telling me this? Tom? He looked up, his eyes wet. Because I can't do it anymore. I can't cover for her. And because I found out she took out a credit card in my name too. Last week. I reached across the table and put my hand on his arm. It was the first human contact I had had with my family in months. You need to protect yourself. Tom, and the kids. I know, he said. I'm thinking about taking the kids to my mom's for a while. Do it, I said. Tom left, looking like a man walking into a storm. I sat there, processing the revelation. My parents were destroying their relationship with me to protect an addict who was lying to them. They were burning my future to fuel her slot machine app. The legal machine ground forward. My attorney, Mr. Henderson, filed the civil suit. The police pressed charges for the identity theft. A preliminary hearing was set. A judge would review the evidence to determine if there was sufficient cause for the criminal case to proceed and to begin mediation on the civil claims. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I paced my apartment. I replayed childhood memories, Christmas mornings, trips to the beach. I tried to find the moment where I became the outsider. Was it when I got good grades? Was it when I moved away? Or was I always just an insurance policy to them? I dressed in my best suit, navy blue, sharp lines. I pulled my hair back. I looked like the successful data analyst they resented. The courthouse was a cavernous building of marble and echoing footsteps. Mr. Henderson met me in the lobby. Ready? He asked. No, I said. But let's go. We walked into the hearing room. It wasn't a full courtroom, just a smaller chamber with a long table and a judge's bench. My parents were there. They were sitting on a bench against the wall. They looked older. My mother's face was drawn and pale. My father looked angry, his jaw set in a tight line. Lisa was at the table with a public defender. She wouldn't look at me. She was staring at her hands. The proceedings were dry, clinical, and devastating. The judge, a woman with gray hair and glasses that sat at the end of her nose, reviewed the file. Mr. Henderson laid it out methodically. Your Honor, we have a clear pattern of identity theft spanning 8 years. He said, we have a signed affidavit from the defendant admitting to opening the accounts. We have the credit reports, and we have the police report. He presented the documents. The judge flipped through them. Then, Mr. Henderson brought up the civil claim, and regarding the civil suit against the parents, Robert and Marie Wood, we have evidence of the misappropriation of a custodial account in the amount of $15,000. Withdrawn on August 14th, 8 years ago, the judge looked at my parents. Is this true? She asked. My father stood up. Your Honor, that was family money. Sarah didn't need it. We used it to help her sister. The judge lowered her glasses. Mr. Wood, a custodial account is not family money. It is the property of the beneficiary. You were the custodian, not the owner. Using it for another child is theft. Plain and simple. My father sputtered. But we intended to pay it back. Intent is not a defense for conversion of funds, the judge snapped. She turned to Lisa. Ms. Wood, the judge said, her voice stern. I have reviewed the affidavit. You admitted to using your sister's identity to secure credit. This is not a misunderstanding. This is fraud. You have compromised your sister's livelihood. You have exposed her to wage garnishment. I didn't mean to hurt her, Lisa whispered. I have kids. I was desperate. The judge leaned forward. Everyone has struggles. Ms. Wood, Not everyone commits felonies against their siblings. Using your children as a shield for criminal behavior is not going to work in this court. This is a serious crime. The judge ruled that there was sufficient evidence for the criminal case to proceed to trial. She also ordered immediate mediation for the civil restitution, noting that if my parents did not agree to a repayment plan, she would likely grant a summary judgment in my favor for the college fund plus interest. It was a total victory, and it felt like an autopsy. We walked out of the hearing room. The hallway was crowded with lawyers and defendants. My parents cornered me near the water fountain. "Sarah," my mother said, grabbing my arm. Her grip was tight, desperate. "You have to stop this." "Stop what?" I asked, pulling my arm away. "The judge just confirmed everything I said. She is going to have a record," my mother cried. "A felony record. Do you know what that does to a person?" "She should have thought about that before she stole $40,000, I said. "Sarah, please," my father said. He looked shaken. The judge's dressing down had rattled him. "We can fix this. We can work something out." "How?" I asked. "Do you have the $40,000? Do you have the $15,000 for the college fund?" "Not right now," my father admitted. "But, look, we will write it into the will. You get the house. When we die, you get everything. It will balance out. Just drop the lawsuit. Tell the DA you made a mistake." I stared at them. They were still doing it. Future faking. Trading a hypothetical inheritance for real-time justice. "I don't want the house in 30 years. Dad," I said, "I want my name back now." "We are your parents," my mother wailed, causing a passing lawyer to look over. "We raised you. Doesn't that count for anything?" "It counts," I said. "That is why this hurts so much. But you aren't acting like parents. You are acting like accomplices." I turned to Mr. Henderson. "Let's go." We walked toward the elevators. Behind me, I heard my mother sobbing. I heard Lisa's voice, low and angry, saying something to Tom. "Mr. Henderson pressed the down button. "You did good." "Sarah," he said quietly. That was hard. I didn't answer. I watched the numbers above the elevator count down. I had won. The law was on my side. The judge was on my side. But as the doors opened, I realized that winning in family court is a misnomer. There are no winners. There are just survivors. I stepped into the elevator. I was safe from their debts now. But as the doors closed, shutting out the sight of my weeping mother, I knew I had just severed the last artery connecting me to the people who made me. I was free, and I was completely alone. The conference room in Mr. Henderson's office was quiet enough to hear the hum of the building's HVAC system. It was a different kind of silence than the one that had hung over my parents' dining table. That silence had been heavy with expectation and guilt. This silence was sterile. It was the silence of consequences. On the table lay 3 stacks of documents. They were thick, bound with heavy staples, and filled with the kind of dense legal language that leaves no room for interpretation. Mr. Henderson sat next to me, his posture relaxed but alert. Across the table, Lisa sat next to her public defender, a harried-looking man who seemed relieved to be avoiding a trial. My parents sat in the corner, not at the table, like spectators at an execution they had inadvertently ordered. "This is the diversion agreement." "Mr. Henderson said, tapping the first stack. He looked at Lisa. "It states that the district attorney agrees to hold the felony identity theft charges in abeyance for a period of 24 months. This is a conditional suspension. It is not a dismissal." Lisa stared at the table. She was picking at a loose thread on her sweater. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her, stripped of the righteous indignation she wore like armor. "The conditions are as follows." Mr. Henderson continued, his voice devoid of sympathy. "First, you will enroll in and complete a court-approved financial literacy and counseling program. Second, you are strictly prohibited from using Sarah Wood's name, social security number, or personal information for any purpose whatsoever. Third, you will adhere to the restitution schedule outlined in Exhibit B. He slid the paper toward her. Exhibit B. detailed a repayment plan for the $40,000 of debt she had accrued in my name. It was structured based on Tom's income and her potential future earnings. It was not aggressive. It would take her years to pay it off. But it was binding. "And if I miss a payment?" Lisa asked, her voice raspy. "Then the abeyance is revoked," the public defender answered, cutting in. "The charges are reinstated, and we go to trial. And given the confession you signed, you will go to prison. Do you understand?" Lisa nodded. "I understand." Mr. Henderson turned to the second stack. "And this," he said, addressing my parents, "is the civil settlement regarding the custodial account." My father stiffened. He looked at the document as if it were radioactive. "It is a notarized acknowledgement of debt." Mr. Henderson explained. "It states that the $15,000 withdrawn from the custodial account, plus interest calculated at the statutory rate, is owed to Sarah Wood. Since you do not have the liquidity to repay this immediately, this debt will be secured by a lien placed on your primary residence at 1402 Maple Drive." "A lien," my mother whispered. It sounded like a curse word. "It ensures that Sarah is paid." Mr. Henderson said, "If the house is sold, refinanced, or transferred, Sarah gets her money first, before you buy a condo in Florida, before any inheritance is distributed." My father looked at me. His eyes were wet, red-rimmed from lack of sleep. "Sarah, is this really necessary?" he asked. "A lien? On the house we raised you in?" "It is the only asset you have." "Dad," I said. I kept my voice steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. "And you proved you can't be trusted with my money. This just makes sure I don't have to trust you." He flinched. The truth was a physical blow. "We are ready to sign," the public defender said. Uncapping a pen, Lisa took the pen. She didn't look at me. She signed her name on the diversion agreement. Lisa Wood. Then she signed the restitution plan. The sound of the pen scratching against the paper was loud in the room. Scritch, scratch, the sound of my freedom being purchased. She pushed the papers away. "There," she spat. She looked up at me then, and the hatred in her eyes was cold and absolute. It wasn't the hot, reactive anger of the dinner party. It was a settled, deep-seated resentment. "Are you happy now?" she asked. "I am not happy." "Lisa," I said, "I am just safe." "Safe," she scoffed. She stood up, gathering her purse. "You turned a mistake into a federal case. You dragged our parents into court. You humiliated us. You stole from me." I said, "For years, I borrowed," she shouted, her voice cracking. "Families borrow. We figure it out. We don't call the police." She leaned over the table, her knuckles white. "You ruined everything. Sarah, you ruined Christmas. You ruined Thanksgiving. Do you think you are ever going to see those kids again? Do you think I am going to let them near you?" Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. "Ms. Wood, I would advise you to be careful. Threatening the plaintiff is not a good way to start your probation." "I am not threatening her," Lisa sneered. "I am promising her. My kids don't need an aunt who cares more about her credit score than their lives." She turned to our parents. "Are you coming?" she demanded. My parents looked at me, then at the papers they still had to sign, then at Lisa. They looked torn, caught between the daughter who demanded their help and the daughter who demanded their accountability. We have to sign the papers." "Lisa," my father said softly. "Fine," Lisa said. "Stay with her. Stay with the banker." She stormed out of the room. The heavy door clicked shut behind her. My parents signed the lien documents in silence. My mother was crying softly, blotting her eyes with a tissue. My father signed with a shaky hand, looking old and defeated. When it was done, they stood up. "Sarah," my mother said, reaching out a hand as if to touch my arm. Then pulling it back, "We just want you to know. We love you. We never meant for it to get this far." "I know." "Mom," I said, "I gathered my copies of the documents, but you let it get this far." I walked out of the office before they could say anything else. I took the elevator down to the lobby and walked out into the bright, blinding sunlight of the city street. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of exhaust and hot pavement, but to me, it smelled like oxygen. I was free. The fracture was immediate and total. That evening, I removed myself from the family group chat. I didn't announce it. I just hit leave conversation. I blocked my parents' numbers. I blocked Lisa's number. I blocked the landline. I expected a storm. But what I got was a vacuum. The silence I had craved for months finally arrived, but it was vast and echoing. My phone, which had been a source of constant anxiety, became just a piece of glass and metal. It sat on my coffee table, dark and quiet. The only lifeline that remained was Tom. I didn't block him. I couldn't. He was the only innocent party in the wreckage. Aside from the children, 2 weeks after the signing, I got a text from him. Just wanted you to know we are okay. Lisa started the counseling. It is intense. She is angry, but she is going. The kids are good. Leo made the soccer team. I stared at the message for a long time. Leo made the soccer team. I should have been the one buying his cleats. I should have been the one cheering on the sidelines. Instead, I was reading about it on a screen in a silent apartment. I typed back, "That is great news. Tom, tell him I am proud of him. Please, I will." He replied, "Take care of yourself." Sarah. That was it. A thin, digital thread connecting me to the people I loved. The months rolled by. The seasons changed from the humidity of summer to the crisp chill of autumn. I threw myself into my work. With the affidavit filed and the police report number officially in the system, the compliance department lifted my suspension. I returned to my desk with a vengeance. I worked late. I took on the complex projects nobody else wanted. I needed the distraction. But I also needed the validation. I needed to prove that I was exactly who I said I was: competent, reliable, and financially unimpeachable. My credit score began to heal. I disputed the fraudulent accounts one by one, armed with the court documents, deleted. The red flags on my file turned to green checks. My score crept up: 600, 650, 700. In November, 6 months after the initial confrontation, I got the promotion, senior data analyst. It came with a raise that was even significant than the bonus that had started the war. I sat in my new office, a real office this time, with a door, and looked at the offer letter. I felt a surge of pride, but it was a solitary pride. There was nobody to call. I couldn't call my mom and hear her say, "That's nice, but Lisa needs help." I couldn't call my dad. I ordered a bottle of expensive champagne and drank 2 glasses alone on my balcony. Watching the city lights, it was a lonely victory, but it was mine. The first payment arrived in December. I was checking my bank account when I saw it. An incoming transfer of $150. Sender: Lisa Marie Wood. Memo: restitution payment one of 260. 260 payments. 21 years. I looked at the number. $150. It was a pittance compared to what she had taken. It wouldn't even cover my grocery bill for the week. But it wasn't about the money. It was about the submission. Every month, for the next 2 decades, she would have to log in, type my name, and send me money. She would have to remember what she did. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. Then, in January, the letter came. It was from a real estate agency. Dear Ms. Wood, we represent Robert and Marie Wood in the potential listing of their property at 1402 Maple Drive. In the course of our title search, we discovered a lien recorded in your favor against the property. As the homeowners are considering a refinance to consolidate debts and potentially downsize to a smaller residence, we require your cooperation to either subordinate the lien to a new mortgage or to establish a payoff amount upon sale. Please contact us to discuss the next steps. I read the letter twice. They were moving. It made sense. The legal fees, the restitution payments they were likely helping Lisa with, the general financial mismanagement. They were bleeding out. They needed to sell the house to survive. But because of me, they couldn't just sell it and vanish. They had to ask for permission. I called the agent. I am not subordinating the lien. I told him, my voice professional and cold. If they refinance, I want to be paid out. If they sell, I want to be paid out. The lien stands in first position. I understand. The agent said, perhaps it would be best if we all met at the property to discuss the valuation and the timeline. Your parents suggested it. They indicated they would like to see you. I hesitated. I hadn't seen them since the courthouse. Set it up, I said. I drove to the house on a Tuesday afternoon. The sky was a bruised purple, threatening snow. The neighborhood looked the same, frozen in an amber of suburban decline. I pulled into the driveway. The realtor's car, a sleek German sedan, was already there. My father's truck was parked beside it, looking rusted and tired. I walked to the door. My hand hovered over the bell. I had a key. I still had it on my ring, but I didn't use it. Guests ring the bell. Creditors ring the bell. Family walks in. I rang the bell. My mother opened the door. She looked frazzled. She was wearing a nice blouse, but her eyes were anxious. Sarah, she breathed. You came. I nodded. Hi, Mom. She moved to hug me, a reflex, but I stepped back slightly. She froze, her arms dropping to her sides. The rejection hung in the cold air between us. Come in, she said, her voice trembling. Everyone is in the kitchen. I walked into the house. It smelled the same, coffee, lemon polish, and old dust, but it felt different. It felt smaller. The walls seemed to have closed in. In the kitchen, my father was sitting at the table with the realtor, a man with a bright tie and a brighter smile. Lisa wasn't there. Sarah, the realtor said, standing up to shake my hand. Good to meet you. I was just explaining to your parents that the market is actually quite strong right now. I sat down. My father looked at me. He looked old. The last year had aged him 10. Hi, Dad, I said. Hello, Sarah, he said. Thanks for coming. Let's get to business, I said, turning to the realtor. What is the appraisal? It looks good, the realtor said, sliding a folder across the table. We are looking at listing at $450, after closing costs and the existing mortgage. He did some quick math on a calculator. There is plenty of equity to satisfy your lien. Ms. Wood, you would get your $15,000 plus interest at closing. And the interest? I asked. Calculated at 6% per annum for 8 years. You are looking at roughly $24,000 total. My father winced. $24,000. To him, it was a fortune. To me, it was justice. We want to sell, my mother said, her voice tight. This house, it is too big for us now. We want to get a condo, something closer to Lisa, to help with the kids. I looked at her, even now, even after everything. They were selling their home to move closer to the source of their destruction. They were cashing out their equity to continue the cycle of enabling. That is your choice, I said, as long as I get my check at closing. Sarah, my father said, his voice pleading, if we pay you the $24,000, we won't have much left for the condo. Prices are high. I looked at him. I looked at the kitchen where I had eaten my cereal before school. I looked at the table where Lisa had demanded half my bonus. I am not negotiating. Dad, I said, that money was mine. Grandpa left it to me. You spent it. Now you are paying it back. That is how loans work. But we are family, he whispered. No, I said, standing up. We are parties to a contract. You taught me that. I walked through the living room. I saw the empty spaces on the walls where pictures used to hang. Presumably pictures of me. Taken down in a fit of anger or shame, the house felt like a shell. It was no longer a home. It was just an asset to be liquidated. I walked to the door. The realtor followed me, babbling about timelines and lockboxes. I stepped out onto the porch. Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, Dad. They stood in the doorway, two ghosts in a house they no longer owned. I walked to my car. I got in and closed the door, sealing out the cold. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. I felt a swirl of emotions, nostalgia for the child I used to be, resentment for the woman they forced me to become, and a heavy, leaden awareness of the power I now held. I could delay the sale. I could make this difficult. But I wouldn't. I just wanted the check. I just wanted to close the ledger. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text from a number I had blocked. But my phone, in its infinite wisdom, had delivered it to a blocked messages folder that I could still access. I opened it. It was from Lisa. There was no subject line, just a photo. I clicked on it. It was a picture of Haley and Leo. They were sitting at a small plastic table, holding up a piece of construction paper. On it, in wobbly crayon letters, was written, "We miss Aunt Sarah." They were smiling. That gap-toothed, innocent smile of children who have no idea they are being used as ammunition. Below the photo was a text. "They keep asking about you. They don't understand why you are so distant. They think you are mad at them. I try to tell them you are just busy, but kids are smart. They know when they are being rejected. Remember who is really hurting here. Sarah, it isn't you. You have your money. You have your promotion. These kids just want their aunt. Is your pride really worth their hearts?" I stared at the screen. The image blurred. It was a precision strike. She knew exactly where to hit. She knew that despite the lawyers, despite the liens, despite the theft, I still loved those kids. She was holding them hostage, dangling a relationship with them in exchange for my capitulation. Remember who is really hurting here. I felt a flash of white-hot rage. She was the one who stole. She was the one who lied. And yet, she had the audacity to frame my boundaries as rejection. I started to type, "You are the one hurting them. Lisa, you are the one who stole their security. Don't you dare put this on me." I looked at the words. They were true. But sending them would just start the cycle again. It would be another battle in the war. I backspaced, deleted. I typed again, "I love them. Lisa, I can meet them at the park. Just me and them. No money talk. No guilt." I looked at that one. It was a surrender. It was an opening. If I saw them, I would see her. If I saw her, she would ask for something. It would start with a lunch, then a bill, then a small loan. I backspaced, deleted. I typed a third time. "Please tell them I love them." I stared at the cursor blinking at the end of the sentence. I love them. It was the truth. But was it enough? I looked at the house. My parents were still standing in the doorway, watching my car. They were waiting for me to drive away, or waiting for me to come back and fix everything. I looked at the picture of the kids. I looked at the text. I didn't hit send. I didn't delete it. I just sat there, the engine idling, the heater humming against the cold glass. I was caught on the knife edge of the modern tragedy. The choice between protecting yourself and loving your family. I put the phone face down on the passenger seat. I put the car in drive. I didn't know if I would ever reply. I didn't know if I would ever see my niece and nephew again. I didn't know if the money from the house would ever feel like anything other than blood money. All I knew was that the light down the street had turned green. I eased my foot off the brake and drove forward, into the gray open road, leaving the house, the debt, and the unanswerable question behind me in the rearview mirror. Thank you for listening to this story. It is a heavy one. I know. It sits with you. It asks questions that don't have easy answers. I'm curious. Where are you listening from today? And more importantly, what would you have done if you were Sarah? Would you have sent that text? Or would you have kept driving? Please let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of betrayal, justice, and the messy reality of human relationships, please subscribe to Revenge Stories. Until next time, keep your boundaries strong. Goodbye.